Wait, what if I told you that some of the most intelligent, credible people on Earth have experienced something so terrifying, so inexplicable that it fundamentally changed their understanding of reality? Military pilots, doctors, scientists, everyday people, all reporting missing time, unexplainable marks on their bodies, memories that don't make sense, and encounters with beings that shouldn't exist. These aren't internet rumors or conspiracy theories. These are documented cases, government records, and first-hand testimonies from witnesses with nothing to gain and everything to lose. What you're about to hear will challenge everything you think you know about life in the universe. Stay with me as we dive into 5 of the most terrifying true stories about alien abduction and UFO encounters that have ever been recorded. And trust me, you won't sleep tonight.
Before continuing to watch the video, please subscribe to the channel and give it a like. Thank you for watching The Witch's Book Dark Tales.
Story 1. The Betty and Barney Hill Case. September 19, 1961. Our first case takes us back to 1961 on a dark highway in New Hampshire. This is the story that changed everything. The case that put alien abductions on the map. The Betty and Barney Hill incident. Betty and Barney Hill were an ordinary couple. Barney worked as a security guard. Betty was a social worker. They weren't attention seekers. They weren't conspiracy theorists. They were normal people living normal lives. Until one night, everything changed. On September 19, 1961, Betty and Barney were driving home from a vacation in Montreal, Canada, heading through the White Mountains of New Hampshire. It was around 10:30 p.m., and the road was dark and relatively empty. That's when Betty noticed something unusual in the sky. She saw bright lights, not like airplane lights, but something different, something wrong. The object was massive, and it was moving in ways that defied the laws of physics. She pointed it out to Barney, and at first he thought it was just a satellite or a plane. But as they watched, the craft began to descend directly toward their car. Barney was terrified. He pulled the car over, grabbed binoculars, and tried to get a better look. What he saw made his blood run cold. The object hovering above them was shaped like a giant cigar, or, as he described it, like a massive spaceship. And along the side, windows. Actual windows. And in those windows he could see silhouettes, figures, beings that were watching him. He ran back to the car in absolute panic. Betty was frightened too, but she was trying to stay calm. Barney floored it, speeding down the highway. But something strange started happening. They both felt an inexplicable pull, a tingling sensation throughout their bodies. The next thing they knew, they heard a series of beeping sounds, beeping that both of them heard clearly. And then, nothing. Complete blackness. When they woke up, they were miles down the road, and 2 hours were missing from their memory. 2 hours they couldn't account for. They arrived home confused, disturbed, and covered in mysterious marks they didn't remember getting. Betty had strange markings on her legs and arms. Barney had unusual lesions on his body that appeared and disappeared over the following days. They were terrified but kept quiet for a while. Then the anxiety began. Strange dreams, nightmares, the feeling that something profoundly wrong had happened to them during those missing 2 hours. Betty began having recurring nightmares about being examined by strange beings in a cold, metallic room. Barney developed severe anxiety and high blood pressure. Desperate for answers, they sought help from a psychiatrist named Dr. Benjamin Simon. During hypnotherapy sessions, which were later recorded and documented, the full story emerged. Both Betty and Barney, independently, described nearly identical experiences under hypnosis. They described being taken aboard a craft, being laid on examination tables, beings examining them, beings with unusually large heads, slanted eyes, and thin, elongated fingers. They described medical procedures being performed on them. Barney described a device being placed against his genitals. Betty described a needle being inserted into her abdomen, as if it was some kind of pregnancy test. The beings communicated with them telepathically. Betty asked them who they were and where they came from. One of the beings showed her a map of space, a three-dimensional star chart with various points and connecting lines. Years later, researchers would discover that the map Betty drew matched actual star systems, including Zeta Reticuli, star systems that weren't widely known to the public at that time. What makes this case even more credible is the physical evidence. The marks on their bodies were examined by doctors. Betty's dress, which she was wearing during the incident, showed tears and marks that were analyzed. There were burns on the car that had no conventional explanation. And most importantly, multiple UFO organizations investigated the case independently and found the Hills to be credible, truthful witnesses. The Betty and Barney Hill case became the first widely publicized alien abduction case in modern history. It opened the floodgates for hundreds, now thousands, of other abduction reports, and it established a pattern that would be repeated in countless other cases worldwide. Story 2. The Zarnesti Mass UFO Sighting, Romania, 1978. Let's travel to Romania in 1978 for our second case, a mass UFO sighting and abduction event that involved hundreds of witnesses. This is the Zarnesti Incident. On August 3, 1978, in the town of Zarnesti in southern Romania, something extraordinary happened. Hundreds of people witnessed a massive UFO hovering over the town. But this wasn't just a sighting. For some, it was far more terrifying. The evening started normally. The sky was clear. It was around 10:00 p.m. Then, witnesses report that the sky began to glow with an unusual, brilliant light. The illumination was so intense, so unnatural that people emerged from their homes to see what was happening. What they saw was indescribable. A massive disc-shaped object, hovering silently above the town. It had to have been at least 300 feet in diameter. The craft was covered in complex geometric patterns and symbols. Lights of different colors, red, green, white, and blue, rotated around its perimeter. The object made no sound, no engines, no propulsion systems that made any sense. It simply hung there, defying gravity, defying logic. Over 200 people witnessed this event. It wasn't a few crazy people claiming something weird happened. It was an entire town watching something that shouldn't be possible. But then, things got more sinister. Several people in the town began reporting missing time and strange memories. A woman named Gita Rotaru came forward with a horrifying account. She had been in her yard when the object appeared. The light grew intensely bright, and then nothing. She found herself lying on the ground, her clothes torn, her body covered in mysterious marks and punctures. She claimed to have been taken aboard the craft and subjected to medical examinations. Over the following weeks, more people came forward with similar stories. They described being lifted into the air, passing through the walls of the craft as if through water, and being examined in cold, clinical rooms by tall, gray figures. They described feeling paralyzed, unable to move or speak, while these beings probed and examined them. What's particularly significant about this case is that it was investigated by Romanian authorities. The government documented the incident. There's an official record of what happened. Over 300 written testimonies were collected from witnesses. The Romanian Academy of Sciences became involved in the investigation. Scientists studied the witnesses. They examined the locations where people reported being abducted. They found nothing to explain the phenomenon in conventional terms. What makes this case stand out among abduction reports is the sheer number of independent witnesses. You can dismiss one person's account, but you can't dismiss an entire town. When hundreds of people, who have no connection to each other, all report similar experiences on the same night, it becomes very difficult to explain away as mass hysteria or delusion. Some skeptics have tried to claim it was a military experiment or a misidentification of a natural phenomenon. But no explanation has ever satisfactorily accounted for what happened in Zarnesti that night. Story 5. The Artur Burtsev Case, Russia, 1989. Our final case takes us to Russia during the final years of the Soviet Union. This is the terrifying account of Artur Burtsev, a Russian army officer. In November 1989, Artur Burtsev was a captain in the Soviet army stationed in the Kola Peninsula in northwestern Russia. The Kola Peninsula is remote, barren, and sparsely populated. It's one of the northernmost inhabited regions in the world. One evening, Burtsev was on patrol with his unit when he decided to step away from the group to urinate. He walked about 50 meters away from his squad into the darkness. What happened next would haunt him for the rest of his life. According to Burtsev's account, he saw a bright light descending from the sky. The light was so intense it temporarily blinded him. He tried to run back to his unit, but he couldn't move. His body was paralyzed. The light enveloped him completely. The next thing he knew, he was floating. He was being lifted off the ground. The sensation was terrifying. He tried to scream, but no sound came out. He was paralyzed, helpless, completely under the control of something he couldn't see or understand. He felt himself being pulled upward, up into the darkness, up into the sky. Then he seemed to be passing through something, a portal or entrance of some kind. There was a sensation of passage, of movement through space, and then everything went black. When Burtsev regained consciousness, he was inside a chamber. The walls were metallic and smooth. There was a glow emanating from the walls themselves, providing a dim illumination. The air felt strange, cold, dry, with an odd metallic taste. Then he saw them. There were 3 beings in the chamber with him. They were unlike anything he could have imagined. They had elongated, almost insectoid bodies. Their skin was a grayish color with a slight iridescence. They had large black eyes that seemed to reflect light like a cat's eyes. Their heads were disproportionately large relative to their bodies. They had arms with too many joints, creating an unnaturally segmented appearance. Burtsev was absolutely terrified, but somehow he understood that they weren't going to kill him. Despite the terror, there was an odd sense of clinical detachment in their behavior. They were studying him, examining him, observing him with the same curiosity a scientist might observe an interesting specimen. One of the beings approached him. It reached out one of its many jointed arms. Its fingers were thin and elongated, ending in what looked like small suction cups. It touched Burtsev's forehead. The moment the being's finger made contact with his skin, Burtsev experienced something extraordinary. Images flooded his mind. He saw Earth from space. He saw cities and civilizations across vast cosmic distances. He saw the beings, their homeworld, their technology, their history stretching back millions of years. He saw conflict, wars, evolution, and advancement. He saw a perspective of the universe that was far beyond human understanding. The experience lasted only seconds, but it was overwhelming. When it ended, Burtsev was sobbing, overwhelmed by the implications of what he had experienced. The beings seemed to lose interest in him after that. They guided him to what appeared to be an exit. He passed through a doorway and found himself floating in darkness. Below him, he could see Earth, the landscape of northern Russia illuminated in the darkness. Then he was falling, plummeting downward rapidly. The sensation of falling grew more and more intense, and he was certain he was going to die. The ground was rushing toward him. But then the falling stopped. He was floating gently down, as if invisible hands were lowering him carefully to the ground. His feet touched solid earth, and he collapsed. He looked up and saw a large, disc-shaped object ascending into the sky, moving with incredible speed until it vanished into the darkness above. Burtsev's unit found him an hour later, collapsed and unconscious on the ground about 200 meters from where he had left them. When he regained consciousness, he was taken to a military hospital. He was examined by doctors. He was interrogated by military intelligence officers. But his story was consistent. He maintained it under intense questioning. He was not mentally unstable. He was a trained military officer, used to maintaining composure and providing accurate reports. The incident was documented in Soviet military records. What makes the Burtsev case particularly interesting is that it occurred during a time when the Soviet Union was experiencing increased UFO sighting reports. The government, increasingly open to discussing these phenomena as the Soviet system was crumbling, allowed some information to be released. The Burtsev case was one of the incidents that was officially documented. Decades later, after the collapse of the Soviet Union, more information about the incident was released. Researchers and UFO investigators were able to interview Burtsev directly. He continued to maintain his account, never wavering, never seeking financial gain or attention. These 5 cases represent some of the most credible, best documented alien abduction accounts in human history. They involve military officers, ordinary citizens, scientists, and professionals. They come from different continents, different cultures, and different time periods. Yet they share remarkable similarities: missing time, unexplained physical marks, memories of beings with large heads and eyes performing medical procedures, communication through telepathy, visions and information downloaded directly into the consciousness. If even one of these cases is true, just one, then we are not alone in the universe. And more than that, we are being visited, we are being observed, and in some cases, we are being taken. The question is, what does it all mean? Why are these beings coming here? What is their purpose? Are they explorers, scientists, kidnappers? These questions remain unanswered, but the testimony remains. Documented, investigated, and often uncorroborated by multiple independent witnesses. The truth is out there, and for these 5 individuals and hundreds of others like them, the truth came down from the sky. If you believe there's more to these stories, if you want to explore the mysteries of the UFO phenomenon further, please subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications. We upload new videos exploring the unexplained, the mysterious, and the terrifying every single week. Do you have your own encounter story? Comment below. I read every comment, and who knows, your story might be featured in our next video. Thank you for watching, and remember, look to the sky. You never know what you might see.